And so when I put stuff up on Facebook, like I might go to the gym and I'll wear like a Michigan State shirt, right? So all my Michigan friends and Professor Reynolds will get on Facebook and say, "Aren't you wearing the wrong shirt?" Well, the next time I wear, my Michigan stuff and the state folks are like, "Crutcher, what's going on?" Yeah, because Kevin Senator will jump in. You should see it's hilarious. So you've got Kevin Senator and Professor Reynolds getting on me about what shirts I'm wearing to the gym.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. Are you planning to travel with your group sometime soon? If so, please consider my sponsor, Kaleidoscope Adventures, a full-service tour company specializing in student group travel. With a former educator as its CEO, Kaleidoscope Adventures is dedicated to changing student lives through travel, and they offer high-quality service and an attention to detail that comes from more than 25 years of student travel experience. Trust Kaleidoscope's outstanding staff to focus on your group's one-of-a-kind adventure so that you can focus on everything else. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you knew one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now, on to my next guest, Damien Crutcher. Hi, Damien.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm pretty good today. Can't complain.
Yeah. So, Damien, we've been talking about doing an interview for quite some time, maybe well over a year now, I think.
I think so. I think like last December at Midwest in Chicago.
Yeah, I think Jenny Neff.
Yeah, we were, she's a good friend of mine. We were classmates at Michigan State way back in the day.
Yeah, you played horn together at Michigan State, right?
We sure did. She was better than I was, but yeah, we played horn together at Michigan State, studied with the same professor.
I see. Yeah. So you're pretty close then.
Yeah, we're pretty close. And she kind of serves as an advisor to my nonprofit, Crescendo Detroit. So we keep in touch on a regular basis.
Oh, great. Well, let's talk about you. So can you introduce yourself for the listeners? Tell everyone kind of briefly what you're doing, and then we'll get into it more deeply later.
Okay, yeah, my name is Damien Crutcher. I am born and raised in Detroit. I still live in Detroit to this day. Was educated here in Detroit Public Schools, went to Cass Technical High School. Undergraduate was at Michigan State University in music ed, and I have a master's degree in conducting from the University of Michigan, where I studied with H. Robert Reynolds. And so right now I do a combination of teaching and conducting and all those things in between. And I run a nonprofit called Crescendo Detroit, which a few of us co-founded 6 years ago for kids in the city.
Excellent. We're definitely going to talk about that. Before we get into all that, Damien, you mentioned you were born and raised and grew up in Detroit. Can you tell everyone, how did you get into music as a child and those sort of early influences on your career?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, in elementary school, Van Zyl Elementary School, which was my neighborhood school in Detroit, we had a fantastic general music teacher. His name was David Williams. And David Williams taught general music, so I started with him in third grade. And he was African American. He was a Cass Tech grad from like the 50s. He was a Michigan State grad, fantastic clarinetist. And he was a wonderful general music teacher. He exposed us to Beethoven, Mozart, William Grant Still, Diana Ross, all kinds of music, Motown, jazz, classical. He exposed us to all those things in third and fourth grade. And he took us to see the Detroit Symphony. So I credit him with giving me my first introduction to music. And as I look back on it, Mark, it was incredible because it was across genres. It didn't matter what the genre was, he introduced it to us. So that was my first introduction. And then in fourth grade, I started trombone and I played for 1 week and I quit. And then in fifth grade, I came back and started playing trumpet. So that's kind of where it all began at my neighborhood school, a couple of blocks from where I grew up at in Detroit.
Yeah. So what was it like in middle school then? So you went to Cass Tech. Now, Cass Tech is a high school. Was it a magnet school when you were still a magnet school when you were a kid?
That was still a magnet school. For like 3,500 kids, and at Cass Tech you had to declare a major.
Oh, okay.
So so it's declare a major. So you could be chem bio, or you could be business, architecture. I was a vocational music student.
Mm-hmm.
When I arrived at Cass Tech in ninth grade, I was a trumpet player. And I was really far behind. I didn't know how far behind I was until I got into rehearsal. And so Mark, my band director, stopped me one day and he said to me, the trumpet is not really working for you. So why don't you find a different instrument to play? And so I just happened to be watching PBS. I don't know why I was watching PBS. And they had there was an orchestra on. And so the camera went behind the horn section. And so I came back to school the next day and I said, Mr. Shelby, I know what I want to play. I want to play that instrument that they put their hand in the bell. Right? And so he just laughs at me. He says, Mr. Crutcher, it's called a French horn. I said, I want to play that. He said, fantastic. And so that was kind of the beginning of my musical life taking off. I could be a halfway decent horn player from the city, African-American male, and I could go a lot of places with that instrument. And I did.
Sure. So, Damien, I want to ask you a little bit more about that. So you mentioned to me before that it changed your life. What was it about the horn that was so much more appealing to you as a trumpet? I mean, what was it that kind of did that for you? I guess I'm trying to make that connection.
Well, it was interesting. I think it was the fact that I got a good start on it, but I met some incredible horn players too. Right around that time, there was a Cass Tech graduate. His name was Ellis Washington. He had just finished at Harvard, and he was coming back to the city. He was an African-American man looking for horn students. And so I, of course, started taking lessons from him.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right. And then his girlfriend, Lisa, she played horn also. Right, which was incredible. So there were three of us. And on top of that, he invited me to come play a duet at his church in Detroit, right? And the church was in the middle of a neighborhood, and the church had an orchestra.
No way.
Yes. The pastor there, his name was Havius Green. He had 8 daughters. All of them had gone to Cass Tech. All of them had played instruments, and all of them eventually would have a PhD in something. So they put together this orchestra. So here I am with 3 horn players. We're all African-American, a full orchestra, all African-American from Detroit, all Cass Tech graduates. And so to be in that environment with the music and all of these folks with degrees and University of Michigan, it really just kind of opened my whole world up at 16.
I'm sort of like thinking through this because, when I think about Cass Tech and the history of that program, I mean, this is Harry Bijan back in the 40s and 50s, right?
Right, absolutely.
And this is also the school where we have like Diana Ross, right? And
yeah, Diana Ross, Lily Tomlin. There's so many people, all kind of famous musicians have come out of Cass Tech. So as a kid growing up in Detroit, sometimes your teachers groomed you to go to Cass Tech.
I see. So it was kind of like a destination.
Yeah, it's kind of like a destination. And I had a couple older brothers who didn't graduate from high school. So I had some teachers who really looked out for me and wanted me to turn out differently.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a teacher in 6th grade, Mrs. Simperger. She said to me, you got to go to Cass Tech. And I was such an impressionable young man. I said, okay, I'll go, So I was being groomed at that age to go to the high school that had this tremendous legacy, not only in music,
Right.
but there were Cass Tech grads who were doing stuff in all areas across the world.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is go to the Wikipedia page and look at the notable alumni.
It's outstanding. People like John DeLorean, was a Cass Tech grad. Ron Carter, the bass player, Regina Carter. There were so many that were Cass Tech grads. So you knew when you walked through the front doors that there was a level of expectation, a level of excellence that you had to achieve.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So how did that feel, though? Was that pressure when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, it was pressure. It was terrible. I should say this. The first year was terrible because I was this mediocre trumpet player, and I'm at this school full of all bright kids, and I've got to take the city bus to get to school. It takes me an hour and a half to get to schools, so I have to be on the city bus at 6:28 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So the pressure and the transition was terrible, but by my sophomore year, I kind of figured out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And to not only survive, but to kind of thrive in that environment. I had some wonderful teachers. There was a teacher there. My band director was Jack Shelby, who was a fantastic musician. He was a clarinetist. There was a harp and vocal and piano teacher. Her name was Pat Terry Ross. And Pat Ross was the epitome of fantastic musicianship, and she was a fantastic teacher, right? She was an African-American woman. She played harp for Motown. She played harp in the symphony. She played timpani in Harry Bejan's band when she was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so when you have those kind of people teaching you who are part of the legacy, you learn to live in that legacy and to make it work for you, work for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was great. It was a great school. So many smart kids and fantastic musicians were there, even with me in the 80s.
Sure.
Incredible. It was a credible experience.
Yeah. Was it very competitive? Did you feel like competition, or was it sort of, we're all here, Cass Tech, kind of like we pull each other up kind of thing? What was it like?
It was cutthroat competitive. Yeah, it was. It was. We had chair auditions every week, and even in your classes, I mean, you were in classes with some of Detroit's smartest kids. And so it was competitive, but we did all feel that bond of being a Cass Tech person.
Yeah, sure.
Like
sure.
It's just like your college. For us, it was like high school. Oh yeah, I'm a Cass technician. So when you meet Cass technicians across the country, any time of wherever you are, no matter what year they graduated, you all feel like you're part of this special experience.
That's incredible. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was there a couple of weeks ago to work with some kids, and they were super smart. I mean, super smart. So yeah, it was a good day. So all of that, playing horn, meeting Ellis Washington, having the orchestra in church, it really just changed my pathway and the trajectory of my life at that point.
So when for sure did you know that you wanted to be a professional musician or a teacher? When was that decision?
I did 2 weeks at Interlochen in the All-State Band.
Mm-hmm.
My junior year of high school. Larry Radcliffe was the conductor. He's now the conductor at the Rice School of Music in Texas. And he was a Michigan grad. He had studied with Bob Reynolds too. He was the conductor, and I was there with maybe 90 other kids who were fantastic musicians, right? And so that 2 weeks really sealed the deal for me. I said, wow, I want to be like Larry Radcliffe. I want to be a teacher and a conductor. right? The musicianship. We played that 2 weeks. We played pieces like Irish Tune from County Derry. We played the Suite Française Mio. We played the Passing Bell Warren Benson.
Another Castech grad.
Right, you see? And the principal horn player, Beth Cook, went on to be in the Los Angeles Philharmonic. There were all of us in there ended up doing great things in music or education out of that group. So that 2 weeks kind of sealed the deal for me.
Okay. All right. And so when did you decide to go to Michigan State?
On the faculty that summer at Interlochen, the all-state horn teacher was Ellen Campbell. And she was married to Doug Campbell, who was the horn professor at Michigan State. And he was the horn teacher that summer for the students who were in the 8-week program. So she cornered me in the hallway one day. She said, "So where do you want to go to school next year?" I said, "Well, I'm looking at Howard University in DC, Wayne State in Detroit." She says, "Nah, don't do that. Just go to Michigan State where my husband is." So she introduced me to him that summer, and the rest was history.
Yeah, we know Michigan State is one of the great music ed schools in the country.
Oh, man, let me tell you, it was a whole nother level, right? It was great. You think about some of the people that I graduated with, including Jenny Neff, Eric Crimmins, Andrea Mack. All of these folks have been Teacher of the Year here in Michigan, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michigan State music ed grads are all across the world doing amazing stuff.
How about your experience at Michigan State? Is there anything that you remember that you want to talk about? Or
yeah, no, it was great. It was the Michigan State was the kind of school that could take a kid like me who was pretty good and really polish us up and make us somebody. They could do that, right? Like Ken Bloomquist, who was the director of bands for years, is one of my mentors. But the one thing that happened for me there that was pivotal was that there was a graduate student named Ronnie Wooten. And Ronnie Wooten was studying with Eugene Corporon at the time, conducting. And Ronnie Wooten was from the South. He was African American. And my freshman year, he took me under his wing and mentored me. So for 4 years, I took private conducting lessons from Ronnie Wooten.
Oh, wow.
So everything he was learning from Eugene Corporon, he would water it down and give it to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. So that by the time I graduated with my music ed degree, I was actually a pretty good conductor.
Yeah, I bet. So let me ask you this. Did you know that you needed that conducting, or was that something that Ronnie kind of said, "Hey, let me help you with this"? Or how did that happen? Because, when I was an 18-year-old college freshman, I didn't know what the heck was going on around me.
Right. I didn't know that. He just kind of said to me, he stopped me in the courtyard one day and said, "So, where are you from?" He said, "You must be one of those Castech grads." I said, "Yeah, I am. So we laughed about it. He says, "You want to be a really good band director?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you really?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, I'm going to show you some things." So he gave me an album to listen to. He said, "Take this album home." It was Fran Fennell conducting the Eastman Wind Ensemble, playing the William Byrd Suite.
Oh, cool.
He said, "Take this home, take this to your room and listen to it and tell me what you think." So I came back the next day and I said, "I don't like it, it's boring." And I don't need to tell you that he went off, right? He went off. "Take it home again and we'll listen to it this time. You've got to get this kind of stuff if you want to be good." So I did. I listened to it all night and then I got it, right? I understood it. And so then he began to teach me conducting and listening to music. He would make me take like Harry Bejan recordings home and study them and compare them to Fred Fennell recordings. Right. He had me like listening to that. And then he would have me conduct. I started conducting stuff like he started me like with the Host Suites, Corrado Shaker Dance, and then we moved to Lincolnshire Posey. So he kind of lit that spark in me too, showed me some things I didn't know. He kicked my butt, Mark. I mean, he really did.
That's amazing that he kind of did that. Now, he just did that because he took a liking to you, or?
I think sometimes, how it is sometimes. I think when you're in a place like Michigan State and you're in the minority, sometimes the older folks look out for the younger folks. And I'm sure he saw himself as a young African American kid at 18, and he remembered what he might not have gotten. He wants to make sure I got it.
What's he doing now?
And so he's at Northern Illinois University now, conducting the Wind Symphony there.
Okay, cool.
And we keep up. But here's the thing. So one summer when I was teaching, I did one of those 1-week conducting workshops in Ann Arbor.
Right.
And Mark, I was just going to kind of keep my chops going, right? And so on the last day, Professor Reynolds, he was saying goodbye to everybody. He says, Mr. Crutcher, I need you to stick around for a minute. I said, okay. And so he took me in the office and he says to me, I don't recruit students, but I'm going to recruit you. He said, I want you to come to Michigan and do your master's with me. He says, you must, pass the audition, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to quit your job and come here full time to do it. He said, but I can teach you. I got some things to show you. And so the next year, I went to U of M to do my master's with H. Robert Reynolds.
That's awesome. Did you teach? So you didn't teach. You went right from Michigan State to Michigan.
No, I taught for 3.5 years in between.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what was that? What was your teaching then?
I was teaching right outside of Detroit in a district called Oak Park, Michigan. I was teaching 5 through 12 music. I was building a program. I had 7 kids in a high school band. I was building it.
Uh-huh.
And the superintendent pulled me into his office and he said to me, I know what you want to do here, but we will never be able to afford it. Oh. He said, so I need you to go back to school and get certified math and science.
Oh,
right. I was devastated, right? Because I had these kids who were believing in what I was teaching them. I had these young boys who I was like their surrogate father.
Yeah.
Right. And so I couldn't stay. And at the same time, I had this offer from Michigan. So I had to make the tough decision to leave and go back to school.
Yeah. How many beginners were you building up from the bottom?
Oh my God. Yeah. I had like 70 beginners. Oh. I had a 7th, 8th grade band of 30 that was really good.
Oh, right? Man. And so they pulled the plug on it because you were being successful and they worried about the high school?
Put the plug on it. Put the plug on it. And it was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made.
Yeah, I bet.
I had some kids that were okay with it. I had some that didn't talk to me for years afterwards. My final concert there was just a disaster, to say goodbye to parents and kids. It was tough. So my first couple of months at Michigan were difficult.
Did anyone take over that program or did it just die?
You know what? No, a couple of people took it over, but it never, until recently, and that was like in '93. Recently, there's a guy there who's building it like to capacity.
Oh, good. Oh,
but that's like 20 years later.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 26, 25 right. years. I know.
You're talking years later. So yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, so there's a whole generation of students there who were missed.
Who missed out on good music education and what good music education can do for you.
Well, that's an important story too, Damien. It's important to talk about that. So you started to talk about your first couple months at Michigan being difficult.
It was tough because the guilt of leaving your community behind, and also being, there's part of us being a Spartan, but now I'm a Wolverine too, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right? You know what I'm saying. So you go through that thing. So it was a couple of moments I thought, oh man, what am I doing? But working with H. Robert Reynolds was like incredible,
I bet.
right? I cannot even explain to you what it was like. He's so gracious, and a lot of folks don't know that about him. He's so kind and gracious and humble with with even though he's as gifted as he is. Like I've never once heard him say anything negative about another conductor.
Yeah.
I was always like I always tried to compete with him. Like he didn't know that though. I always tried to like if I rehearsed the band after him, I tried to be better than him, and I never did, of course.
Well, that's
You
good
know?
though, because that gives you something to try to like aspire to.
Right. And he pushed me. I remember after a couple months, I was there, he stopped me and says, everybody likes you and you're doing really good work. He said, but I want you to work harder. I said, even harder? He said, even harder.
What do you think is the greatest lesson you took from your time with him?
Oh, the greatest lesson I think was um it's to work hard is good. To have a balance in life is better. And not to promote yourself. He was big on that. He said, don't promote yourself. Stay humble, work hard, and things will come your way. But, don't sell yourself. Don't push yourself on people. Don't try to be the best one in the room. Just be the best you can be. He was big on that and never stop learning. Even we try to go to lunch every other month or so, and he's always bringing me new material. Like, look at this, study this, read this. You got to read this. You got to do this.
Of course, a lot of the guests on my show have been touched by him at some point or another because of his influence. I've never met him.
Yeah. You have to sit down with him once. First of all, he's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'd say that one of the number one things is I appreciate, with his fame and notoriety, that he really handles it in a very humble and kind way. But he's a stickler for things being musically right.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing about being a great conductor, right?
Right. Yeah. He's really he'll ask me, so what are you doing? What music are you doing? And I'll say, okay, I'm doing this. He's okay, that's good. And what are you doing? And what are you conducting? He always wants to know what I'm doing and stuff. So he keeps up with me. He comes to, he's a supporter of Crescendo Detroit. He comes to our concerts here in Detroit. So it's a good thing.
So, Damien, after you finished your master's in Michigan, what was the transition? Because I want to get to Crescendo Detroit and the things you're doing now. Can you kind of walk me through that period? Sure.
Oh my God. And I'm blessed because I know I've had this kind of unconventional pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just kind of learned how to do it by faith and make it work. So when I finished at Michigan, and this was the only time that I think Professor Reynolds was not happy with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, most of his students go on to teach at the university level. And of course, there were several universities that were interested in me auditioning. And of course, he was instrumental in that. But I got a phone call from a school right outside of Detroit, Southfield Lathrop High School. And the band director met me, says, I'm quitting next week. I'm quitting the job next week. The kids won't listen to me. I can't do it anymore, but I think you could come here and do this. So I had 3 interviews, right? I had an interview with this high school principal at Southfield Lathrop, and I had 2 college interviews the next week. Needless to say, I never took the college interviews. So, Professor Reynolds was not happy. But anyway, he was not happy. I had to go back to him and say, I'm going to take this high school job. So that was tough. But it was in a school, mostly African American, right outside of Detroit. And the principal said to me, come here and help me build an incredible band program. He said, I'll help you. I said, okay. So I took the job in Southfield and um, built an incredible program. My kids played at Carnegie Hall. A lot of those students who were in that band are professional musicians and teachers today. So I did that, Mark, for 12 years.
Okay.
Right? But I still kept feeling like I still got to get to Detroit. I know Southfield is just about Detroit, but I got to get into Detroit and do something. So I stopped teaching in '08 to figure out how I could create a program that would help kids in the city itself. Okay, so it took us some years. We tried some things didn't work. So that's when we came up with Crescendo Detroit about 7 years ago.
So tell me about, I want to kind of dig into some of these things, but tell me about Crescendo Detroit. What is it?
So Crescendo Detroit is, I kind of we created a hybrid program. So I took some ideas from El Sistema, like starting kids at a young age, no matter what the instrument is, building a sense of community, making sure that the program is accessible to all kids. So I took those things and combined it with what I had done in music ed all of my life. And so Crescendo Detroit has some elements of El Sistema in it. Each one of our kids starts an instrument around 5 or 6 years old, brass, woodwind, string, or percussion. Each one of our students takes dance and choir. And we have life skills. And we feed the kids at every session. So we meet Mondays and Wednesdays after school, 4 to 7:30, Saturday mornings, 9 to 1. And so the program is about building character using the arts.
I see. And is it sponsored? Are these kids paid for as far as?
So what happens is that we have about 400 donors who give to us 2 or 3 times a year. And those donations range from $5,000 to $10,000.
Okay. Wow.
And quite a bit of our donor base is made up of music teachers, retired and present performers, make up most of our donors. And we have a couple of foundations that help us too. The Angel Foundation out of Chicago, Maxine and Stuart Franco here in Michigan, their foundation, Panasonic, and then there's some local high schools that donate money from their concerts to us as well.
That's awesome. And so how many kids?
Yes, we're proud of the program. We're so proud of what we've been able to do. We've got 55 kids.
55 kids. What are the ages?
5 to 17.
5 to 17.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 5 to 17. Most of our kids are in that, looks like between 5th grade and 8th grade level at this point. And so we asked the kids to pay something, it costs us maybe $1,500 a year to run it for each student. So we asked the parent to kick in a couple hundred. And if they can't, we have them help us with a fundraiser or two.
Well, right. Well, you need to have them put something in so they value it.
Right. We learned that the hard way the first couple of years. So once they had some skin in the game, attendance went up and we were able to retain more kids from year to year.
Right. Now, do they know how much of it's subsidized, or is that just something you don't say?
No, I tell them every day.
All right.
No, I tell them, you should see the face. I tell them every day.
Uh-huh.
I tell the kids every day. I tell the parents every time I see them. I let them know, because, if you don't know what the value of it is, how do you value it?
Yeah.
And so if they know that every time we come together to eat, it costs $200, to feed you breakfast. Every time we get on the bus, it's $300 to go to U of M. I have to tell you about that too. We have this fantastic partnership with Michigan. I'll tell you about that. But every time you eat, every time we go, every time we put gas in the van, so it's really helps because the parents want to know that too, and they feel like they're a part of a valuable program. And some of our parents, they struggle with the tuition, so they'll bring food in, which is great. I tell them it's fantastic.
Whatever you can do.
Whatever you can do it. And so the parents volunteer. They bring in food. They eat with us some nights. I tell them, come on in and eat with us. They're a great group of parents, actually. Wonderful.
All right, before we get to Michigan and the partnership you have, I want to ask two questions. One, what was that decision like? I mean, I know you did it because you wanted to do something for your home city and get into Detroit, but how hard was that to leave Southfield Lathrop and make that plunge into that? That must have been really difficult.
Oh, Mark, you ask good questions, man.
I try.
You're good at this. Wow, you're good at this. Wow. Wow, that's really good because it was. It was an incredible decision. I'm a deeply religious person, and so the church is an important part of my life. In walking by faith and doing things by faith and making sacrifices is kind of how I've been brought up. So, I had the conversation first with my pastor, and actually he brought it to my attention first. He said, "I want you to be ready because your life may change in the next couple of years." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Just be ready for your assignment. You might change. Just be ready." And I thought, man, I've got the best band around here and I'm making good money. He says, "Well, just know sometimes we're asked to do different things, right?" So I said, okay. He saw something on the horizon. He did. He really did. And so I talked to my dad about it and my family, my brother and sister. I said, "This is what I'm thinking." And they said, "Hey, we got your back. Go for it." The most difficult thing, though, of course, was to tell the kids and to tell my principal, right? And I anguished for months. I said, "How am I going to tell my principal? I got to tell her, And so one day she had an impromptu faculty meeting, and she was announcing that she was moving to a different school in the district. Which I was like, wow, that's great. So then I was able to go into her office the next day and say, "Hey, I got something to tell you."
Took you off the hook.
Yeah, it did. She says, "Crutcher, I would have killed you if I was still here." So I wanted her to know so she could walk me through the process of telling my kids. So it was very tough. It was very tough. It was, you're giving up a livelihood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to scale back. Personally, you have to scale back. I was driving a Cadillac, so now I got to turn my Cadillac in, and I got to go get me a used Explorer. You just do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I had people around me that were in my corner, and so yeah, it was tough. It was difficult. It was tough, but it was exciting also.
Yeah, I mean, you basically gave things up so you can make more of a difference in the world, and that's really to be commended.
And I had great people around me who helped me. And then, Mark, at the same time, people started realizing I was off during the day, right? And so band directors would call me before festival season and say, "Can you come spend 2 days and help me get ready for festival?" And so I've become this festival person now. I've been to 2 schools every day this month, like conducting groups, getting them ready, tightening them up for festival, giving my comments to the teachers, the conductors. So yeah, it's become this whole thing with Crescendo and that. So yeah, it was an interesting move. It was a great move, obviously, but it's tough to do that.
Yeah, I bet. So you made that move, and I mentioned that you're making a difference in lives. So let me ask you about the kids, the 55 kids you have now and the others that you've had in the program. Would they have music if it weren't for Crescendo?
Most of them, no. No, most of our kids attend schools that do not offer band, choir, dance, art, and even gym. Even though Detroit is starting to bring those programs back, But for the most part, our kids are still in schools that don't have those things.
Do you have any great success stories? Anyone you want to like talk up?
From Crescendo, yeah, we've got a couple. We've got a young man who is in medical school now in Georgia. I can't think of where he's at. I think Emory University Medical School, and he was one of my first kids.
Oh, awesome!
Right, he's doing well. He has a sister that's also in college, so we've got a few of those that were with me that are doing well. I just can't wait for this next group to come through.
You're showing these kids that there's something. There's a path.
Yeah, that's like we care. We care about them. We've built this safe space, but we've pushed them too, right? Because so many times when people start programs in cities and in rural areas, they're afraid to have high expectations for the kids, but you have to, right? You've got to push them. You've got to expect from them what you expect from any kid anywhere.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so they got to do that. And so you got to show them that. You got to push them. You got to believe in them. You got to understand, too, some of them have problems. Well, all kids have issues, but some of them have some serious problems. And that you have to kind of walk them through that, too. So we have a full-time social worker.
You just don't know. Every kid, they're just kids.
They're just kids. And every kid has a bag or two they bring, right?
Yeah, it's true. And, we have to always remember that as teachers. We can't ever look past those kids.
We can never look, because you never know. I mean, just think about a kid like me. I could have very well been overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some folks that are still surprised that I'm doing the things I'm doing now, but it's because a teacher saw something in me. Several teachers saw something in me. The Reynolds, the Wootons, the David Williams from Van Zyl, the Wanda Simperger from middle school, they saw something in me special that I didn't see.
So before I forget, tell me about your partnership with the University of Michigan.
Okay, so a few years ago, I had the thought that I wanted to get kids to campus. I figured that if I could get kids to campus, they would start thinking about college. They would start feeling comfortable at a university. Because I knew that 2/3 of my students, when they go to college, they're going to be first generation.
Yeah, and that's a particular challenge.
And that's a particular challenge. So just to get to think about that and what it takes to get there and to know that you can do it. And so I had lunch about 4 years ago with Dr. Colleen Conway. She's music ed faculty at Michigan. And I said, this is what I want to do. I said, I want a program where my kids can come up. I said, I want my kids to get lessons from music students, music ed students in particular. And I want them to come to concerts, and I want them to take classes. I want them to come to Ann Arbor maybe 18 or 20 times a year. And so she took it, and she took it to John Ellis, who was the associate dean. And it took us a year to make it happen. But I think now we're in our 3rd year.
Wow, that's an incredible value add to your program for those kids.
It is, Mark. It is, and we love it. So the kids go up every couple weeks. They have lessons with the music ed students or music performing students who have gone through some training. Mm-hmm. And then they have a dance class, and they have a choir or a general music class. So they spend from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the School of Music in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, being around that environment. Like, I'm the son of teachers, school teachers.
Right.
So when I got to college seemed easy, because
Right.
I'd been prepared by my parents my whole life. And when you see the other side and you see how hard it is for kids who don't have any conception of what it means to study or to, the things, because college is, my father always called it a game.
Mm.
And he didn't mean it like it was light
Right.
or flippant. He meant that there's rules
Strategy.
to it. There's rules to it, like you're playing a game.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to hear you do that.
Right. And so for me, and I know because I'm first generation college in my family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So my first 5 or 6 months at Michigan State, I was learning the game. But I had roommates and friends who were second generation. So I kind of just did what they did until I figured it out.
You sort of watched them, yeah.
Oh yeah, I did. I watched them carefully. I just did what they did. I said, okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. But yeah, it's an incredible burden when you've not been brought up in that environment. Like you don't really understand paperwork and going to see the council. It's just you don't understand the game.
Do you have any advice for teachers who might have students like that who are going off to college, high school band directors? Anything that they can offer those students as far as a support or advice or?
Oh, I think talk to them. I think advice. I think you start preparing them as ninth graders. I think you take them to campus as much as possible. You have them meet college professors. You bring college professors into your room to talk about it. You have those college conversations. This is what you're going to expect. This is what you're going to see. Like I always tell my kids at Southfield Lathrop, I would tell them stuff like, um, study hard and party a little bit, right? And I would tell them, guard your credit score in college. Like, don't get every credit card that's offered to you.
Right, because they do offer them to college students intentionally.
Right? I said, don't do that, and hook up with these kind of kids and do that. Yeah, I think they just have to talk to them and get them ready for it. Like your dad told you, it's a game. So, son, these are the rules of the game.
Man, it's such an important thing because it's a step where kids can get lost.
It's a step where kids can really get lost, right? And a lot of crazy stuff can happen. So we're just like, so when I see my young men from Crescendo, my seventh graders walking up and down the hallway at the School of Music at the University of Michigan, going to the vending machine, sitting in the lounge, going back to class, it makes me feel good. It makes us feel good. It makes the board feel great. It makes my donors happy to give. When they see that, and it makes you feel like, okay, we could do this. We could do this. We can make this happen. So for us, Mark, like my young ladies in the group are like, they're going to be superstars. We're just right now, we're really focusing on the boys. They're going to be okay too. But, sometimes us young men take a little bit more work.
So, Damien, you mentioned before I started to record that you also conduct the Farmington Community Band, the Detroit Symphony Community Band, and the Detroit Symphony Youth Community Band. You want to tell? That's a lot of conducting. You want to take me through some of that briefly?
Sure, I will. So, for 16 seasons, I've been the conductor of the Farmington Community Band, and Farmington is a suburb of Detroit. And the group is in its 54th season. And it's only had two conductors, the founder, Paul Barber, and then myself. And it is a big community band, though. It's about 90 players.
Wow.
And it's a great group, though. We do all kinds of literature. We play at Orchestra Hall. We're going to do a 55th anniversary concert at Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor next year. Mm-hmm. And we could play grade 3 through grade 5 literature. So 6, we could do Lika Sharposi, and we could do some of Omar Thomas's stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a great group. It's, my youngest player in that group is 16, and my oldest player, I think, is 87.
That's awesome. That's a really good community band if you're playing Lincolnshire.
Yeah, it's a good group. Yeah, it's a good group. We could do it. It's a good group. Some of them are Michigan grads from the Ravelli days. Uh-huh. Right. Some of them are Michigan State grads. So I've got good players, solid players in that group.
Is it audition?
Nope. It's just come one, come all.
Really?
Right.
That's awesome.
And I've been able to make it work. So you might get someone that comes in and says, I haven't played for 20 years. I said, you know what? Just have a seat. Play as many notes as you can, because the person next to you is going to cover the rest.
Well, that's true. It never changes whether it's their 80 or their 8, right?
It doesn't.
It's what I just had my first beginner concert with my 4th graders, and one of the little clarinet players came up and said, I don't know all my notes. I said, just fake it. Everyone around you is going to take care of it.
That's right. It's a team. It's a team sport for sure, right?
Absolutely.
And then for the Detroit Symphony, I conduct two groups. They have an adult band, which is the Detroit Community Concert Band, which is in its third season. So I'm the founding conductor of that, and that's sponsored through the Detroit Symphony and the Wu Family Academy,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the big donors of the DSO. So it's part of their community engagement and outreach series. And so we meet on Tuesday nights, and it's a great group. Also, I have music teachers in that group. We just had a performance. We performed American Elegy, Frank Kelly, Divertimento, Persichetti, and some other pieces. So that's a good group. And they meet on Tuesday nights. So Farmington meets on Monday nights. Detroit Community Band meets on Tuesday nights. And then on Saturday, the Detroit Symphony has their civic youth program. So we have 3 bands and 5 orchestras.
That's an incredible.
3 bands. There's a wind ensemble, symphony band, concert band, 5 orchestras on Saturdays, and then there's a jazz program on Mondays. And so I conduct the middle school concert band.
I'm stunned by those numbers. Wow.
I know it's huge. It's huge. It's humongous. So if you come to Orchestra Hall on a Saturday, it's a zoo.
I bet.
It's a zoo. It's great though. It's a zoo. It's great.
Yeah, that's a good energy. I bet.
It's great energy, and in particular, I have kids in my band who I've gone after kids who may not have a music program in their school, or they may come from a poorer school district. So my band has a lot of kids like that in it, which I love. So the DSO is committed to every kid getting a good music education.
Yeah, I see. I'm looking at the Civic Youth Ensembles webpage at the moment. So this is 1970 this program was founded?
It started in 1970. It looks a lot different than it used to.
Sure, I'm sure.
You know, when it started, like I played it in high school, but it was just one orchestra. And it was like high school and pre-professional. And so now it's like we have some elementary kids, elementary through 12th grade high school.
Sure. Wow, I'm looking at all the groups. The Detroit Pistons Bucket Band, huh?
Yeah, right. Just all kinds of stuff. It's great. It's all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're really committed to artistic excellence from the orchestra all the way across the board.
Yeah, that's awesome. Damien, this is really cool stuff you're involved with. I'm really admire all this that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm blessed. I'm fortunate. I work hard at it, and I've got good people around me who, whenever I get tired or I start to doubt some things, they say, no, let's go. Let's keep going. You got to keep going. So I'm fortunate to have that.
Hey there, everyone. My name is Ann Molesky, and I'm the host of the Anna Krusick Podcast, another podcast in the Muted Network. It's my mission to help music teachers be more purposeful, sequential, and joyful in each and everything they do as teacher-musicians. Join me every Thursday as I share tips, tricks, and meaningful conversations with other music teachers about how to make the general music classroom more intentional and impactful for both you and your students.
You ready to get into the final questions, the big philosophical questions?
Sure, let's hit it.
All right. So I asked these questions at the end of every interview, kind of like so that I have sort of common ground between everyone who comes on the show. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of like big philosophical questions about the music education world or the music world. And the first of them is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
That's a good question. I think, I am a supporter of competition. I think that competition is good to a certain degree if it's positive, if it adds rigor to what kids are doing, if kids can be successful at it, if it builds up kids' character and their self-esteem. I think it's a good thing. If it crosses over to the other stuff, I'm not for it. if it's unhealthy, if it causes damage to kids, then I don't support it. But healthy competition is good. That rigor is great. I come from that background in Cass Tech and all that, so I like some of that.
So you mentioned this briefly when you talked about H. Robert Reynolds, but how do you find work-life balance in your career as a music teacher, music educator?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's critical. And I tell all the younger teachers this, that it's important to find a balance early on and maintain that balance. Even the balance between artist and teacher, like you have to continue to feed the artist side of you, go to concerts, read the New York Times arts and leisure section, play if you can, perform if you can. That kind of balance is crucial also. But I think carving out time for family, carving out time where there's no music playing, and carving out time for yourself is crucial to your kids being successful, because a burned out band director is no good. Right, no good at all. They're no good. So you've got to force that. Sometimes you have to leave some stuff at work.
The analogy I use is when you get on a plane, they tell you to put your oxygen on first before you help others.
Right, exactly. You've got to do that. So an invigorated, rested, valued music teacher usually has a very good, well-rounded program.
This is a big question, and people answer it in a lot of different ways. But what are the challenges facing music education, and how can we best meet them?
Things like making sure that all kids have access to quality music education is a challenge. That every school has a certified band teacher, choir teacher, orchestra teacher is still a challenge. Also, I think that kids are a bit different in general. They're a bit different than they used to be. So we have to be more equipped as music teachers to deal with personal issues. So we really do have to wear the hat of the social worker, as the surrogate parent, as the counselor. We have to wear those hats even better nowadays. And so, yeah, those are crucial things to me. Access and understanding kids at a deeper level is going to be important. And just making sure that even the younger music teachers have mentors that have been around that can help them through the difficult times.
All right, Damien, if I had a time machine and I could take you back to the afternoon of your high school graduation, what advice would you give yourself?
Wow, that's pretty good. What advice? Wow, what advice would I give? You know what I would tell? I would tell me that no matter what, all is going to be well for me. I would tell myself that, because I had some difficult moments during college, figuring out things. My mom passed my first semester at MSU. And so I would just tell myself, like, be ready for difficult times, but you're going to be all right and life is going to be good.
Wow. So I asked you earlier about that, like your first semester, we talked about it. And so your mom passed away too. Boy, what a challenge that must have been for you as a young man.
In November of my freshman year. She had been kind of sick, but it still was, it's still terrible. But I'm glad I was at Michigan State, because my friends and my professors, they handled it the right way. They didn't coddle me, because they know I didn't want to be coddled, but they gave me space to make up assignments. Mm-hmm. And they didn't treat me any different. They kept pushing me along, which was great. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time.
Did you ever think about quitting?
I did. Actually, when I came home for the funeral,
yeah,
I figured I was going to stay home. I guess I'm going to stay home. My dad said, well, no, actually, you're going back tomorrow.
Good for your dad.
I said, well, don't you need me to stay here with you? Should I stay here with you all? He said, no, just go back. You got to go back.
Good for your dad.
And so
must have been hard for him.
Yeah, my dad was he was an amazing man. He was a brick mason. He worked hard so that we could be who we are.
Yeah, because he could have used you emotionally.
Right, he really could have. He could have leaned on me, Yeah. But he knew that I had to finish, so that my younger brother would finish. Yeah. So I went to Michigan State, and so when I was a junior, my brother was a freshman at Michigan State. He followed me at State.
That's awesome.
So my brother's an engineer now, and he really is the brains behind Crescendo. So my dad knew that I had to go. You got to go back because your brother's got to follow you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was good stuff.
That is great. It's an inspiring story. It's a kind of a life lesson, I guess.
It is. It is. It's been good. It's been good. So we just, we're going to spend our time and pass it along to all the young folks that we can.
Yep, that's what it's all about. Paying it forward, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right, Damien. It sounds like you've conducted a lot of music in your career.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to ask you this one, and it's not your favorite piece of music. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the one that means the most to you. If you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd conduct?
Wow. The final work?
Yeah, the last one.
The last one. Wow, Mark, that's a good question. I can tell you this. Let me say this, is that I conducted the wind ensemble at Wayne State University last winter. Mm-hmm. And I programmed Omar Thomas's Of Our New Day Begun.
Uh-huh. Yeah, terrific piece of music.
And I have to be honest, I had never had a piece of music affect me as deeply as it did.
Yeah. Omar's something, man. He's a talent.
He's a talent. I told him a couple of years ago, I said, man, you're about to blow up, man. You are. So I would want to do that again.
All right, Damien, we're almost done. Is there anything coming up you'd like to share or promote?
Really nothing in particular, just all of my concerts, Farmington, Detroit. My Crescendo kids are going to be in recital at U of M March the 28th at the School of Music. And so you will have 55 kids, their parents and grandparents, all crammed into the rehearsal hall at the University of Michigan. You have never seen that many Black people in that place at once. And we love it. Everybody loves the faculty, the students, everybody loves it. They say, we love this. This is the way it should be. So that's March 28th. We're looking forward to the kids doing their work there. And so that's going to be a good thing. And I'm in the next week, on Tuesday, in a couple of weeks, I'll be guest conducting the Pacific Symphony Wind Ensemble in California.
Oh, cool. Is that in Stockton at the university?
That's not the university, but Dr. Greg Whitmore is the conductor, and I'm going to guest conduct.
Okay, cool.
So looking forward to that. So good things are happening.
Yeah. So, Damien, how can people get in touch with you?
They can email me at dkcrutcher@crescendodetroit.org. They can Facebook me for sure. They can Instagram. They can call me at 313-310-3383. They can Google me. They can find me some kind of way.
All right. Awesome.
I would love to hear from people for sure.
Damien, thanks so much for being a guest on the show.
Mark, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Wow, you do a good job.